Every night for 7 months, a 15-year-old girl named Aaliyah Renee Brooks set her alarm for 2:15 in the morning, waited until the apartment was silent, crept down the hallway past her little brother's room, and stood outside her mother's bedroom door, listening. She was listening for breathing. Specifically, she was listening for the long, rattled exhale that her mother, Denise, made when the pain medication wore off, a sound Aaliyah had memorized the way other teenagers memorize song lyrics, because that sound meant her mother was still alive. And every night for 7 months, a 39-year-old woman named Denise Brooks set her own alarm for 2:10 in the morning, 5 minutes before her daughters, took her pain medication, steadied her breathing, and lay perfectly still so that when Aaliyah pressed her ear against the door, she would hear a rhythm that sounded like sleep and not like a woman trying not to scream. Neither of them knew the other was awake. Neither of them knew the other had set an alarm. For 7 months, a mother and a daughter performed the same ritual in the same hallway at the same hour, each one protecting the other from a truth that was already killing them both: that Denise Brooks had stage 3 inflammatory breast cancer, that her insurance had denied the targeted therapy she needed, that the treatment cost $19,500, and that neither the mother nor the daughter could figure out how to say those words out loud without the other one breaking. On July 12, 2019, Aaliyah Brooks walked onto the Family Feud stage in Atlanta, Georgia, looked Steve Harvey in the eye during a face-off round, and said 7 words that made the host of the most-watched game show in America step away from his podium, press both hands flat against the wall behind him, and cry in front of 300 people and 12 cameras. "I'm playing for my mom's chemo." Steve Harvey, a man who has been talking on television for 30 years, could not respond for 14 seconds. When he finally spoke, he said 5 words that would be replayed over 380 million times. "Come here, sweetheart, right now." Then he opened his arms, and a 15-year-old girl who had been pretending to be strong for 7 months walked into them and stopped pretending. Aaliyah Brooks stood backstage in the narrow corridor outside dressing room 2, braiding and unbraiding the same section of her hair, a nervous habit she'd had since she was small, one she thought she'd outgrown until 7 months ago when the habit came back and refused to leave. She was wearing a white blouse with a small yellow ribbon pinned to the collar, Denise's favorite color. Her mother was not there. Denise was at home in Macon, Georgia, in bed, too weak from her last round of standard chemotherapy to travel. Aaliyah's team was made up of people who had agreed to come in Denise's place: her Aunt Patricia, her mother's best friend Yolanda, her cousin DeAndre, and her neighbor Mrs. Evelyn Carter, a 67-year-old retired postal worker who had been bringing meals to the Brooks apartment 3 nights a week since the diagnosis, and who had told Aaliyah, in the car on the way to the airport, "Your mother raised a warrior. Now, go be one." Aaliyah heard the Fitzgerald family, their opponents, a big cheerful group from Jacksonville, laughing and clapping in the hallway behind her. She didn't turn around. She closed her eyes, pressed her hand against the yellow ribbon, and whispered something so quietly that Patricia, standing 2 feet away, couldn't hear it. She was talking to her mother. She did this sometimes. Talked to Denise when Denise wasn't there, as if the words could travel 280 miles by themselves and land in her mother's ear. But nobody in that studio knew what was about to happen next. $19,500. That number lived inside Aaliyah Brooks's chest like a second ribcage, rigid, permanent, pressing against everything else. She had first seen it on a medical bill that fell out of her mother's purse on December 8, 2018, 5 days after her 15th birthday. The bill was from the oncology department at Navicent Health in Macon. It listed a drug called trastuzumab deruxtecan, targeted therapy for HER2-positive inflammatory breast cancer, with a cost of $19,500 per cycle. Aaliyah didn't know what trastuzumab deruxtecan was. She looked it up on her phone in the school bathroom during fourth period. She read for 40 minutes. She learned that her mother's cancer was aggressive, that standard chemotherapy was slowing it, but not stopping it, that the targeted therapy was the recommended next step, and that without it, the 5-year survival rate dropped from 61% to 23%. She put the bill back in her mother's purse. She went to class. She did not say a word. Denise had been diagnosed on May 14, 2018. She was 38. She had found the lump herself, in the shower, on a Tuesday. The way it always happens in the stories, except this was not a story. This was a Tuesday in May in a 1-bathroom apartment in Macon, Georgia. And the water was running and her 12-year-old son Jalen was banging on the door, asking if she was almost done. Denise worked as a billing specialist at a medical office, earning $36,200 a year. She had health insurance through her employer. The insurance covered standard chemotherapy. It did not cover trastuzumab deruxtecan, which was classified under a Tier 4 specialty drug provision that required prior authorization and a $19,500 copay per cycle. Denise filed her first prior authorization request on September 3, 2018, denied on September 20th. Tier 4 specialty drugs require step therapy documentation, showing failure of 2 prior lines of treatment. Denise's oncologist submitted documentation showing partial response to 2 standard regimens with disease progression. Second request filed October 10th. Denied October 29th. Step therapy requirement not satisfied. Tumor marker analysis does not confirm treatment failure. Third request filed November 19th, with a peer-to-peer review between Denise's oncologist and the insurance company's medical director. Denied December 2nd. Peer review completed. Determination unchanged. 3 requests. 3 denials. The oncologist told Denise that without the targeted therapy, they would continue with standard chemo, but the cancer was adapting. Time was not on their side. Denise told no one. She told her sister Patricia that the treatment was going fine. She told Yolanda that the doctors were optimistic. She told Aaliyah and Jalen that the medicine was working and they shouldn't worry. She said, "I'm fine," the way all the mothers in these stories say I'm fine, with steady eyes and a voice that does not shake, and a body that is coming apart behind the performance. But Aaliyah knew. Aaliyah had known since December 8th, since the bill fell from the purse, since the 40 minutes in the school bathroom reading about survival rates on her phone. She knew the difference between the medicine is working and the truth. She could see it. She could see it in the way her mother moved, slower each week, gripping furniture when she stood, closing her eyes mid-sentence, as if the effort of speaking required a rest. She could see it in the bathroom trash can, where the anti-nausea medication wrappers accumulated faster than they should. She could see it in her mother's hair, which was thinning, which Denise covered with a scarf and called a fashion choice. Aaliyah did not confront her mother. She did the thing that the children in these stories always do. She carried it silently. She picked up shifts at the grocery store where she worked part-time after school. $9.50 an hour, 15 hours a week. She put every dollar into a savings account she had opened with Patricia's help. After 7 months, the account had $1,847. She needed $19,500. The math was impossible, and she knew it. And she kept working anyway because the alternative was doing nothing, and doing nothing meant watching her mother die. Jalen, 12 years old, loud, athletic, Denise's shadow since birth, didn't know about the insurance denials. He didn't know about the targeted therapy. He knew his mother had cancer. He knew she was getting treatment. He knew she was tired all the time. He had adjusted to the new rhythms of their life, the quiet dinners, the early bedtimes, the way Aaliyah had taken over the cooking and the laundry and the school drop-offs without being asked. But Jalen noticed things. He noticed that Aaliyah never slept past 2:30 in the morning anymore. He noticed that his sister's light came on at 2:15, went off at 2:20, and didn't come back on until her school alarm at 6:00. He didn't know what she was doing. He didn't ask. He was 12. He filed it somewhere inside himself and carried it the way 12-year-olds carry things, without words, without questions, with the dull, persistent ache of knowing something is wrong and not being old enough to fix it. One Saturday morning, 3 weeks before the taping, Jalen was sitting on the couch watching cartoons when Aaliyah came out of Denise's room. She had been helping Denise to the bathroom, something that had become necessary on the bad days, the days when the chemo hit hardest. Aaliyah closed the door behind her and leaned against the hallway wall and pressed her palms against her eyes. Just for a moment, just for 2 seconds, the way you do when you need to push everything back down before it comes up. Jalen was watching her. She didn't see him. When she dropped her hands and opened her eyes, he was standing 3 feet away in his pajamas, holding the TV remote, looking at her with an expression that no 12-year-old should know how to make. "Is Mama going to be okay?" he asked. Aaliyah's face went blank. The emergency blankness of a person who has been caught being afraid. "She's fine, Jay. She just needs help sometimes." Jalen looked at her. He didn't blink. Then he said 5 words. Simple, quiet, devastating. "You can't do this alone." Aaliyah's jaw tightened. She forced a smile. "I'm not alone. I've got you." Jalen looked at the floor. Then he said, very quietly, "I hear you at night." Checking on her. Aaliyah didn't answer. She walked past him, went into the kitchen, gripped the edge of the counter, and stared at the sink until the blurriness went away. And that wasn't even the part that made Steve cry. It was Mrs. Evelyn Carter, the retired postal worker who brought meals 3 nights a week, who told Aaliyah about Family Feud. She had seen Aaliyah's grocery store schedule taped to the refrigerator and noticed that the girl was working every available hour. She asked why. Aaliyah said she was saving for something. She didn't say what. But Evelyn had been bringing meals to that apartment for 7 months, and she had watched this family close enough to understand the shape of what was missing. She printed the application. Aaliyah filled it out in the school library during lunch, listing Patricia as the family captain. The producers called back in 3 weeks. Aaliyah told Denise she was going on a trip with Aunt Patricia for a college campus visit. Denise was too tired to question it. She said, "Have fun, baby, take pictures." The Brooks family won the face-off. They won the first 2 rounds. They were headed to the 3rd when the moment happened. Steve was at the podium, reading question 3 of the face-off between Aaliyah and the oldest Fitzgerald brother. The question was, name a reason someone might go on a game show. Aaliyah hit the buzzer. She was faster. The stage light hit her face. 300 people leaned forward, and this 15-year-old girl, 5'4", 118 pounds, wearing a white blouse with a yellow ribbon and carrying 7 months of silence inside her, looked Steve Harvey in the eye and said, "I'm playing for my mom's chemo." The studio fell completely silent. Not a gasp, not a murmur. Silence, the kind that drops on a room like a physical weight. Steve's hand was on the card. His arm froze, his mouth opened. The word what formed on his lips but never became sound. He stared at Aaliyah, this child, this girl, standing at a buzzer on a game show, answering a question about why people go on game shows by telling the truth that no one in the building had been prepared to hear. Steve set the card down. He stepped back from the podium. He took 3 steps to his left and pressed both hands flat against the wall behind him, as if the wall was the only thing keeping him upright. His face turned away from the cameras. His shoulders dropped. 14 seconds passed. 14 seconds of a man pressing himself against a wall because the ground no longer felt stable. When he turned around, tears were running down both cheeks. He didn't wipe them. He didn't try. "Come here, sweetheart," he said. "Right now." Aaliyah walked to him. Steve opened his arms. She stepped into them. And the performance ended. The 2:15 alarm, the listening at the door, the blank face, the grocery store shifts, the savings account, the "I'm fine." All of it. She pressed her face into Steve Harvey's chest, and her body shook with the force of 7 months of silence breaking apart at the seams. The studio fell completely silent for the second time. A camera operator in the right wing lowered his rig. The floor director was standing motionless, cue cards at his side, tears running into his collar. A makeup artist near the monitor wall was holding a tissue against her mouth with both hands. Steve held her. He didn't let go for 22 seconds, an eternity on live television. Then he pulled back, put both hands on her shoulders, and looked at her. "How old are you?" 15. Steve closed his eyes. 15 years old. "Yes, sir, and your mama has cancer. Breast cancer. Stage 3. She needs targeted therapy. The insurance denied it 3 times. It costs $19,500. Steve's face went through something that 300 people would later describe identically. The look of a man who has just realized that the child standing in front of him has been carrying something that most adults couldn't survive. He turned to the control booth. "Stop everything. We're done playing." A producer appeared at the curtain's edge. Steve held up one finger. "Do not." The producer stopped. Steve turned back to Aaliyah. "Let me tell you something. I know about carrying things alone. There was a time in my life when I wrote a goodbye letter to my family. I was done. I had given up. And someone, a stranger, told me to hold on one more day. Just one more day. And I held on. And I held on the next day. And the next. And 20 years later I'm standing here." He paused. "You've been holding on for your mama for 7 months. At 15. Setting alarms at 2 in the morning. Working at a grocery store. Hiding it. Carrying it. And nobody knew. Aaliyah, you are 15 years old. You should not be standing on this stage trying to save your mother's life. But here you are. And I want you to hear me. You are the bravest person who has ever stood on this stage. In 45 years. The bravest." Steve pulled out his phone. The audience murmured. "This is Steve Harvey. Get me the oncology billing department at Navicent Health in Macon, Georgia. I have a patient. Denise Brooks. Stage 3 inflammatory breast cancer. She was denied coverage for trastuzumab deruxtecan 3 times. The cost is $19,500 per cycle. The Harvey Foundation is paying for the first cycle today. And I need to speak to her oncologist's office to schedule it immediately." The voice on the other end confirmed the patient information. Steve said, "And I want the foundation to cover every subsequent cycle she needs. Every one. Until her oncologist says she's done. You bill us." The studio erupted. Aaliyah's knees buckled. Patricia caught her. Yolanda was on her knees praying. DeAndre was pressing his forearm against his eyes. Mrs. Evelyn Carter was standing perfectly still, both hands clasped at her waist, tears running silently down her face, nodding the slow, steady nod of a woman who had been leaving meals at a door for 7 months and had just watched the reason walk onto a stage and break the world open. But Steve wasn't done. He held up his hand. The room went still. "The treatment is covered," he said, "but this girl has been working at a grocery store after school, 15 years old, making $9.50 an hour, to save money for her mother's cancer treatment. She has a savings account with $1,800 in it. Money she earned bagging groceries and stocking shelves. I want that money to stay exactly where it is. That's her money. For college. For her future. Not for chemo bills." He turned to the camera. "I want to talk to everyone watching at home right now. This child is 15. She should be thinking about school and friends and what she's going to do this summer. Instead, she's setting an alarm for 2:15 in the morning to listen to her mother breathe. She's working every hour she can get at a grocery store. And she walked onto this stage and answered a game show question with the truth. I'm playing for my mom's chemo. In 45 years of this show, no one has ever given that answer. Because no 15-year-old should ever have to." He walked across the stage to the Fitzgerald family. All 5 of them were crying. Marcus Fitzgerald, the father, stepped forward and said, "I have a daughter. She's 16. I looked at Aaliyah, and I saw my baby." He turned to Aaliyah. "You take our prize. You take all of it. Your mama raised a hero, and she doesn't even know she's watching one." Steve pressed his handkerchief to his face. He turned away. His shoulders moved. When he turned back, his voice was raw. "Both families win today. Full prize. Both families. Nobody loses here." He wasn't finished. Steve picked up his phone one last time. Speaker on. He called his business manager, set up a fund by end of week, the 215 Foundation, named for the time a 15-year-old girl set her alarm every night to check if her mother was still breathing. For any child in America under 18 who is carrying the burden of a parent's cancer treatment. Starting balance, $350,000. I'll match donations up to $1 million. The taping ran 52 minutes past schedule. Every crew member stayed. A sound technician who had worked on the show for 18 years later said it was the only taping where she turned off her equipment after the stoppage and just listened. Because what was happening in that studio was no longer television. It was a family being held up by strangers. Today, Denise Brooks is 44 years old. She is in remission. The trastuzumab deruxtecan worked. 4 cycles over 20 weeks, each one funded by the Harvey Foundation. Each one shrinking the tumor until her oncologist used the word undetectable on March 7th, 2020. At 9:45 in the morning, in an exam room at Navicent Health, with Aaliyah sitting beside her, holding her hand so tightly that Denise's fingers went numb. When the doctor said the word, Aaliyah looked at her mother and said, "I told you." Denise said, "You told me what?" Aaliyah said that you were going to be fine. Denise stared at her daughter, this girl who had carried the truth for 7 months without ever saying it out loud, and understood for the first time that Aaliyah had known everything. The denials, the cost, the odds, all of it. When the episode aired 8 weeks later on September 6, 2019, the clip of Aaliyah saying "I'm playing for my mom's chemo" was viewed 88 million times in the first 72 hours. Within 2 weeks, it crossed 380 million views. The hashtag 215am trended in 58 countries for 8 consecutive days. Pediatric caregiving advocacy organizations reported a surge in calls. Parents discovering for the first time that their children had been carrying burdens they never knew about. 3 months after the taping, Denise completed her second cycle. The tumor had shrunk by 40%. She was strong enough to walk to the mailbox for the first time in weeks. Aaliyah watched her from the window and let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. A year after the taping, the 215 Foundation had received $5.4 million in donations from 61 countries. It had provided support, counseling, respite care, financial assistance, and peer mentorship to 2,870 children under 18 who were serving as caregivers for parents with cancer. Aaliyah was named the Foundation's first youth ambassador. 5 years later, the 215 Foundation has served over 6,100 families across 43 states. A bill requiring hospitals to screen for minor caregivers during oncology intake, the Aaliyah Brooks Caregiver Recognition Act, was introduced in Congress in 2024. The Foundation's motto, printed on every letter, "You can't do this alone." Aaliyah Brooks is 20 years old. She is a sophomore at Spelman College in Atlanta on a full scholarship. She is studying pre-med. She wants to be an oncologist. She still sets an alarm for 2:15 in the morning, not to check on anyone, but because her body won't let her stop. She lies in her dorm room at 2:15 and listens to the silence and remembers the hallway, the door, the breathing, the 7 months of standing in the dark, making sure her mother was still there. Then she closes her eyes and goes back to sleep. Denise Brooks is cancer-free. She still lives in the apartment in Macon. She works at the same medical office. She wears a yellow scarf on Tuesdays. Aaliyah's class schedule has a gap on Tuesdays, and they FaceTime at noon. And Denise wears the scarf because yellow is the color Aaliyah chose for the Family Feud blouses, the color she pinned to her collar on the day she walked into Steve Harvey's arms and told the truth. Steve called Aaliyah on her 20th birthday. No cameras, just a phone call. He asked what she wanted. She said she wanted to be a doctor. Steve laughed and said, "You're going to be a great one." Then he got quiet. "Aaliyah, I need to tell you something I've never said publicly. When you walked into my arms on that stage, I felt something break in me that I didn't know was still intact. I've been doing this a long time. I've seen pain. I've seen sacrifice. But a 15-year-old girl standing at a buzzer and answering a game show question with 'I'm playing for my mom's chemo,' that was the moment I understood that this show is not about entertainment. It never was. It's about the fact that sometimes the only stage a person has, the only place they can say the thing they've been carrying, is a game show. And you trusted me with it. A 15-year-old girl trusted me with the heaviest thing she had. I will carry that with me for the rest of my life." Aaliyah doesn't set the alarm on purpose anymore, but it goes off anyway, somewhere inside her, at 2:15 every morning, a small internal clock that she built when she was 15 and cannot dismantle now that she is 20. She wakes. She listens. She hears nothing, no rattled exhale, no pain medication wearing off, no mother pretending to sleep. Just silence. The good kind. The kind that means everyone is safe. And 280 miles away, in a one-bathroom apartment in Macon, Georgia, Denise Brooks is asleep. She does not set an alarm for 2:10 anymore. She does not take pain medication. She does not lie still and control her breathing. She sleeps the way a person sleeps when the thing that was trying to kill her is gone, and the person who saved her is safe, and the hallway between their doors is just a hallway again. Quiet, dark, and empty of everything except the faint smell of lavender detergent and the echo of a ritual that held them both together when nothing else could. Because that is what this story was never about. It was never about a game show or a buzzer or an answer that silenced a studio. It was about a hallway. 3 feet of carpet between a mother's door and a daughter's door, walked in darkness at 2:15 in the morning by a girl who was too young to carry what she was carrying and too brave to put it down. It was about 2 alarms, set 5 minutes apart by 2 people who loved each other too much to let the other one know they were afraid. And it was about the truth that the people who save us are not always the doctors or the foundations or the men on television who write checks. Sometimes they are 15 years old and they work at a grocery store and they set an alarm for 2:15 in the morning. And they stand in a dark hallway, listening for one breath. Just one. Because one breath means one more day. And one more day was all they ever asked for. If this story about a 15-year-old girl who carried her mother's fight in silence moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share this video with someone who needs to know that the bravest thing a person can do is stand in a hallway at 2:15 in the morning and listen. Have you ever carried something for someone you love and never told them? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to ring that notification bell for more moments that restore your faith in humanity.